Hey guys, all right, today we're doing lesson 8.5 part 2 where we are going to continue to graph using slope-intercept form. And the big difference today is that all of the equations are not going to start in slope-intercept form, so we're going to need to move them. However, this is a skill we've already worked on before, so we're really just practicing a skill we've already done because, to remind you, as we talked about, function form and slope-intercept form are the same thing. In fact, let's write that up at the top here. So slope-intercept form is the same thing as function form. So before we were calling it function form because we didn't know about slopes and we didn't know about intercepts, but now that we do, we're going to use that slope-intercept form more frequently than function form. But just so you know, those are exactly the same thing. And so what we know is that before we can identify the slope and the y-intercept of an equation, we need it to be in slope-intercept form. In other words, that's going to be in the form y equals the x term plus or minus the constant. And remember, we just talked about how this would be y equals mx plus b, where m represents the slope and b represents the y-intercept. All right, and so that's the form we've already practiced moving things into. So let's take this first equation where we have 15x plus 5y equals 10. And if my goal is to get y by itself, then I need to move the things away from the y. And so just like we've practiced before, I'm going to start by subtracting 15x. Since that is a positive 15x, to get rid of it, I need to subtract, so that cancels, and I have 5y equals negative 15x plus 10, because I'm going to make that x term come first right away. You can make that addition if you want. Then I'm going to divide everything by 5, and so I get the equation y equals negative 3x plus 2. And so now I'm in function form or slope-intercept form. So then this is just what we practiced in the previous lesson, where we're going to start by identifying the y-intercept. And remember, we've talked about how the y-intercept is the constant there. And so in this problem, the y-intercept is 0, 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is plot the point 0, 2, because I know that has to be a point on my line. Then I'm going to identify the slope, which, if you remember, we talked about how the coefficient is the slope. So in this problem, the slope is negative 3, or I could write that as negative 3 over 1, or I could write it as 3 over negative 1. So I'm going to start at 0, 2. And I can either move down 3 and right 1, or, just so you know, you could move up 3 and then left 1. It depends on if you put the negative sign with the numerator or the denominator. So if I move down 1, 2, 3 and right 1, I can do that multiple times. Remember, it doesn't really matter how many points you do, as long as you have enough to make your line. I always like to make several to make sure my line's in the right spot. Or I can go up 1, 2, 3, but then I have to go left 1, and you'll notice that that's on the same line. And so then I'm going to make my nice straight line there, and you'll notice that right away we see we have a negative slope, and so I know I do need to have a falling line there, which I do. All right, let's try the next problem. So again, my equation is not yet in slope-intercept form or function form. And so the first thing I'm going to do is try to get y by itself. So if you want, you can make this addition. Then since it's a positive 3x, I am going to subtract 3x to get rid of it. I have negative 2y equals negative 3x plus 6. Again, feel free to make that addition if it helps you. Then I'm going to divide everything by negative 2. And again, this should look familiar to you because this is exactly how we practiced moving things into function form before. A negative divided by a negative becomes positive, but I am just going to leave that as 3 over 2 since that's already simplified. and then plus -3. So my slope is 3 over 2, and my y-intercept is 0, -3. And again, I cannot identify the slope and the y-intercept until it is in slope-intercept form, which is why that's the first thing I have to do. But now I can go ahead and plot the y-intercept on there, because that is always my starting point. And from there, I'm going to count my slope. So I can count up 3 and right 2. Or you could think about the slope as -3 over -2, and then you would be counting down and left. So either way, those are going to end up all on the same line. So if I go down and left, you'll notice that's in the same spot. And again, it doesn't matter how many points you make, because the points aren't the answer, the line is your answer there. So I make my nice long straight line, and again I do my double check here that the slope is positive, so I should have a rising line, which I do. All right, let's try number 2 now. So in this one, I again am trying to get y by itself before I can identify the slope and y-intercept. Again, you have to be in slope-intercept form before you can identify those. So since it's a positive 3x, I'm going to get rid of that by subtracting 3x, so that cancels. And I get y equals, feel free to make it addition if you want, -3x plus -1 or -1. And so now I'm done because y is already by itself here. So I can go straight to identifying the slope, which is -3, or you could write it as -3 over 1, or it could be 3 over -1. All of those are equivalent. The y-intercept is 0, -1. So the y-intercept is always your starting point. I put that on the graph first, and I can either count down and right or up and left. So I'm going to actually count both ways, or up and left. And from there I can make my line. And again, I can see right from the beginning my slope is negative, so I do know that my line needs to be falling, which it is. So right now, I'm going to ask you to pause the video and try 3 and 4. And when you're ready to check your answers, press play again. All right, let's go ahead and check our answers real quick. So one thing you'll notice on number 3 is we end up with a -2 divided by a -3. And so again, I changed that to positive 2/3, and then 0 divided by anything is just 0. So you are welcome in your answer to have in your function form +0. You don't have to. You're welcome to, no matter whether you have it or not. The y-intercept is the origin, 0, 0, and then the slope is 2 over 3. It's a positive slope, so you should have a rising line, which I do. And then in number 4, you subtract 10x and divide by -5, so you end up with your slope being 2 or 2 over 1, and your y-intercept is 0, -6. And so for this one, you can't really count down and left. You have to count up and right in order for it to fit on the graph. All right. Hopefully that helps you see the way that when we don't get equations in slope-intercept form, we can move them, then identify the slope and the y-intercept and graph from there. Have a great day.